you got to let them go at some point, and you got to choose who you're going to keep, because their value can only be so high after a certain period of time, which we have seen so far. But we got one more clip then, Zach, that continues on with this conversation, and maybe we got to speed it up because it's a little bit later on, where Jim Bowden was on Foul Territory after he talked to Mike Elias about the situations there, but he talks about what he thinks this team should do if he was overlooking it, and what the pressure is that's on Mike Elias moving forward. So, Zach, let's play that clip.
I'll give you my opinion here. I'm going to start with this. I texted Mike Elias after the news came out about the firing, and I told him that I know it was a difficult decision. I said, I think you did what had to be done. At the same time, I know it's the worst part of the job of being a GM or a president, is having to fire the manager or releasing a player. That's the worst part, because you're firing a friend, you're firing a family, and although you think the relationship can stay the same afterwards because it's a business decision, it really doesn't. And so the whole process is terrible. That being said, the important thing that I texted him afterwards was, it's not about who you fired, it's about who you hire to replace him, and the difference and the impact that next person gives. Now, I wasn't aware at the time that he was hiring Tony Mansolini to be the interim manager for the rest of the year. At the time, I did not think that was what they were going to do. So let's talk about when you fire a manager in season, what has to happen. One of two things. Either one, you better win more games with the next manager than you did with the one you have. Or number two, you're making the change because in order to win next year, you've got to make the change now to prepare for it, because the approach or the process or the plan or the strategy that is implemented now isn't working and you don't think is going to work. So in this particular case, the Orioles have zero chance of coming back and getting back into this race because they don't have any pitching. You don't have pitching, you can't win. I don't care what your lineup looks like. It's not going to happen. And with the Orioles, you're looking at Corbin Burnes is sitting in Arizona. Grayson Rodriguez is on the injured list. They're your two best starters. Charlie Morton's 0-7 with a 7.6 ERA. Kyle Gibson just got designated for assignment with a 16 ERA. And Dean Kramer and Cade Povich's ERAs are north of 5. And they're not going to be able to turn it around with what they have. They're just not. So the key is the new manager going to come in and make a difference? Now, when we heard Mansolini's comments after the game, and by the way, he didn't talk to the media before the game, only after the game, which made no sense. I was shocked when the media said, "What was your message to the team?" And his response was, "I didn't have a message, but I'll have one in the next couple of days, I'm sure." Well, what are you talking about? You don't have a message. You've been there the whole time. You don't have a message of telling the players that you got the manager fired? You're not hitting, you're not pitching, you're not catching the ball, or you don't have a message to say, hey, we're going to change things and this is what we're going to do? That's concerning to me. Now, you asked me what I would do. All right, number one, they don't have players in the right position, right? I mean, Gunnar Henderson should be at third. Jackson Holliday should be at short. Westberg should be at second. They should give Mayo first base and Kerstedt left field and let them play every day. So in November, we know if they can play or not, if they're going to hit or not. It's okay to not platoon at every single position and have all this quote-unquote positional flexibility. So I think they need a different approach here. Now, if I were the GM, I would be hiring outside the organization to bring in a different voice, a different approach, a non-biased opinion, and whether that's a proven guy like Skip Schumacher, who won Manager of the Year with the Marlins, or whether it's A.J. Przinsky, who brings that edge that clubhouse could use, to me, you had to bring in somebody outside.
There was Jim Bowden on Foul Territory, and you can find Foul Territory. It's on YouTube. They're on X, Instagram, everywhere. And Jim Bowden has a lot of experience as a former general manager. Now, I don't agree with how the roster construction of your infield should be necessarily, because especially Jordan Westberg is a very good third baseman. I'm good with Jordan being there. Jackson Holliday, Zach, I know it's bothering you. Why would you want to move Jackson off a place where he's finally getting comfortable?
And the kid's finally hot for the first time in his, he's finally putting everything together. He's let's throw him across to shortstop again. Let's throw a wrench and everything. I like what he was saying in every part of that, including the roster platooning stuff. I thought he nailed everything about that. except the move Jackson to short, Gunnar to third, Westy to second. Just keep it the same. They're doing well right now. Keep that the same. But I agree. If you decide that this season is a wash, maybe we'll say in a month or so from now, what they need to do is give Kobe Mayo first base, or wherever. You're half DH, you're half first base. Give Kerstead, be like, hey, you got left field, sink or swim. And it's not anything about, we need to see even if it's not about seeing what they have, you need to give these guys consistent playing time, because look at Kyle Stowers. We just talked about it. How incredible has consistent playing time been for him? It's changed everything for him. Let Mayo play, let Kerstead play, give them every day at bats, let them. I don't think it is a coincidence that Jackson Holliday is getting, for the first time in his career, consistent everyday playing time. Even when they feel they need to start Jorge Mateo, they're putting Jorge at short and DHing Gunnar. They're not taking Jackson out of the line, but I don't think it's a coincidence that he is now putting on a performance of what we thought he could do. This is what they need to do. Let the young guys play. If you're not going to compete for a World Series this year, if you're sitting down the line, if it's sitting in, August, September, let the guys play. If they fail. That's okay. We watched Jackson Holliday. Everyone's celebrating Jackson Holliday right now. This is not the same Jackson Holliday that I saw come up last year. That was a totally different player, but he learned.
Yeah, and he learned, and he's 21.
Yeah.
He's 21 years old. He is going to be more than fine. It's reps. Now, one thing I want to argue when you talked about was saying, hey, when the Orioles are out of it, or not argue that, I wanted to emphasize the Orioles were out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying, hey, let guys run it out and let prospects or let ever play. The Orioles going into the season, and last year, they couldn't afford, in their mind, that we're going to let our prospects jump in to play, because you already had those guys that you just appointed. So Westberg proved he was your all-star third baseman. He's staying. Gunnar is staying. Cedric and Santander on the team, they were where they were supposed to be. Kyle Stowers, and I applaud for two reasons. Or one, like that he got out of a situation and he blossomed, but it is a lot more, or it's a lot easier to play. Not like the Orioles season in 21 that Cedric had, where you've lost 100 million games. Yeah. That sucks. And maybe the Marlins have to deal with that later on. But going into a season where you're going to start on that team, and the Marlins have zero expectations, that matters. Now with the Orioles going into the season, how magnified was Jackson Holliday when he came up as the number one overall pick, as the future on one of the best teams in baseball? A lot of pressure. Kobe Mayo, people are getting on him, and he's had 50 at-bats down his career, but last year came up down the stretch of the playoffs on a very good baseball team that was trying to get out of a struggling time. Now, the one thing I want to at least talk to, and one thing that I think is definitely going to happen in the future, Zach, is there's going to be a philosophical change with the team. Philosophically, if there's a lot of things that Jim was right on, and I agree about saying a voice, but it's not even about bringing a new voice in as a manager. This is internally. You philosophically got to go, all right, what do we need to change from the top down? And yes, you bring in a manager, and I personally think if you're bringing in a veteran, a guy that's been there, and I love Buck Britton, and I love Robinson Torino's great guys, and Buck was my manager. It's a veteran presence, a guy that has been there and experience personally fits that bill, but someone that's not from inside, which I agree with Jim. But it doesn't matter at all if you bring someone else new in, if you don't change how you're going to conduct things. Analytics are a big part of the game, which I agree with, which I understand. But the fundamentals of the game of baseball have not been good enough for the Baltimore Orioles. That needs more emphasis.